I used to be the student who barely passed. Now I consistently pull top grades, and it's all because I threw out my entire study routine and adopted the Japanese study method. If you know anything about Japan, you know their students face intense, brutal pressure. Their exams are life or death for their careers, and a single bad grade can literally cost them their dream university or future job. To survive that pressure, they don't rely on motivation or studying the day before exams. They rely on a bulletproof system designed to ruthlessly memorize massive amounts of information without failing. Pay attention to this video, because this is the only system that will finally get you the grades you want. The first reason your current study routine is failing is because you treat studying like a comfortable, aesthetic hobby. You study sitting on your bed, lounging on the couch, or with a YouTube video or music playing in the background. When you do this, you end up getting distracted every few minutes. In the Japanese system, there is no room for this. They rely on a concept called shu, which means creating a deep focus environment where you study and do nothing else. For me, that meant I had to stop studying on my bed or on the floor. Instead, I started studying at the same desk every single day, sometimes at the quiet floor of the library or at a specific cafe. When you sit at the exact same desk, with the exact same lighting and the exact same setup every single time, you are training your brain to associate that specific physical environment with a ruthless, immediate mental flow state. The moment you sit in that chair, your brain should automatically recognize that it is time to work. No distractions. So, if you want top-tier grades, you have to create an environment that triggers immediate focus the second you sit down. Once you have that environment locked in, you need to actually study. But how do you do that? You see, most students sit down and tell themselves they're going to study for 3 or 4 hours straight. And what actually happens? The first 15 minutes go well, then your brain starts wandering, you check your phone, you reread the same sentence 5 times, and suddenly an hour has passed, but you've barely absorbed anything. Your brain simply isn't built to maintain deep focus for long periods of time. Japanese students avoid this problem by breaking their study sessions into short, extremely focused blocks. This is called the Pomodoro technique. Instead of trying to study endlessly, you work in strict cycles. You study with full focus for 25 minutes, and during that time, you do absolutely nothing except the task in front of you. Then, once those 25 minutes are over, you take a 5-minute break. Stand up, stretch, walk around, reset your brain. After the break, you start another 25-minute session. These short cycles do something powerful psychologically. Because the time is limited, your brain stops resisting the task, and during those 25 minutes, your focus becomes much deeper because you know the break is coming soon. The third technique is very important. You see, the reason why most students fail is because they are raw-dogging their lectures. And I mean that literally. They are walking into a lecture with zero preparation, sitting down, and treating the whole thing like a podcast. Then afterwards, they walk out feeling like they attended class. But did they actually learn anything? Japanese students do not do this. They use an interesting system that begins before they step in class. Before class, they quickly preview the material. This means reading the relevant textbook section and scanning through the slides the professor will use. They don't try to master the content yet. They just try to understand what the topic is, what the main subtopics are, and where things might get confusing. While doing this, they also write down a few questions, things they don't fully understand yet, or concepts they want clarification on. This is called the Shitsumen method, which is based on active questioning. By doing this simple preview, they train their brain to identify its own blind spots. So when they walk into the lecture, they're not hearing the material for the first time. Instead, their brains are actively searching for answers to the questions they already wrote down. Then, during the lecture, their role changes completely. Most students try to copy every word from the slides. But the slides already exist. They can read them later. Instead, their only job is to write down what the professor says that is not on the slides. This is the extra sauce that makes them A students. They write down the context, the warnings about exam questions, the real-world examples, the emphasis, and the off-script explanations that professors add while teaching. To do this effectively, they follow what many Japanese students practice, a kanji-style note mentality. Kanji characters compress large amounts of meaning into a small symbol. and their notes work the same way. Instead of writing everything down, they compress the lecture into small, dense cues that trigger memory later. Short phrases, arrows, keywords, and quick reminders of ideas that the professor emphasized. It's almost like making a mind map. After school, Japanese students don't just call it a day, they spend a little more time studying. To the average student, this might sound like overdoing it, but this is exactly where the real results come from. They take this time to rewrite what they learned in class from memory. They write this in a clean study guide in their own words. Rewriting from scratch without looking is called active recall, and it is the most consistently proven study method that exists. Every single time they force their brain to retrieve information without looking at the source, they strengthen that memory pathway and make it genuinely difficult to forget. That is how they build a brain that retains things. Students who follow this system start to notice something their classmates completely miss. When they consistently rewrite their notes and pay close attention in lectures, they start to realize that the professor keeps saying the same things over and over again. They keep circling back to the same concepts. They keep flagging the same topics. They keep saying things like, "This is going to be important," or "Students always get this one wrong," or "Make sure you really understand the difference between these two." Most students hear that, nod, and move on without doing anything with it. What they don't notice is that their lecturer is basically giving them an exam blueprint for free. And Japanese students take full advantage of that. They keep a page behind their notebook that they call an exam hint tracker. This is where they write every single time their professor hints at what is going to be on the exam. Over the course of a semester, that page becomes one of the most powerful resources they have. Because when studying, they open the tracker, skim through it, and immediately start seeing the important topics the professor has been pointing toward all semester long. Once they have identified those high-yield topics, they turn them into flashcards and use something called spaced repetition. Basically, they review the card on day 1, then again after 3 days, then after 1 week, then after 2 weeks. The spacing is the entire point. Their brain is being forced to retrieve the information just before it would naturally start to fade, and every successful retrieval cements it deeper. By the time they walk into the exam hall, the material does not feel like something they crammed the night before. It feels like something they simply know. That is the difference between a student who survives an exam and a student who dominates it. Now, let's talk about something most study videos completely ignore: managing the rest of life while doing all of this. Because many students are not just studying. They have part-time jobs, family responsibilities, personal lives, and multiple demanding courses all happening at the same time. Japanese work culture has a philosophy for this called kaizen, the practice of making small, consistent, daily improvements rather than exhausting, dramatic leaps. Applied to student life, kaizen becomes the answer to the balancing act. If they are working a part-time job, the goal is not to quit or burn out. It is to work just enough to cover essentials while keeping school as the top priority. They front-load their shifts early in the semester when academic pressure is lighter. Then, as midterms and finals approach, they deliberately reduce their hours to create the mental space needed to focus. Small, intentional adjustments every week, not a last-minute panic. That is how top Japanese students operate. And now that you understand the system, you can start applying it yourself.